Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us in yet another session for the Summer Brown Bag series of the Department of Psychiatry. Today, we are honored to have, as well as it says there, CompHERE. Many of you have heard of this organization. If you're from Rochester or if you're touching the mental health field, you may know of CompHERE. I'm excited to have them here. I used to be a CompHERE myself, so I'm excited to hear what new and exciting things have been going on in this session. But I'll tell you, so today's guest, we did have two on the schedule. One has taken ill, so you'll only see one person up here. And you will meet momentarily Sara Passamonte. She has been with CompHERE since 2005 in various positions. She is the current president and CEO and has been so. She's been in that position since 2020. And she is responsible for agency-wide programmatic and financial oversight, in addition to policy development, strategic planning, and implementation. Not only does she work in this space, she's also a CompHERE volunteer herself, which is exciting for me because she's serious about this work. She has worked and continues to work with youth, adults, and veterans, and we are very honored to have her with us today. So please join me in welcoming Sara Passamonte.
Thank you so much, Chanel. Thank you to your whole team for putting this together and making it so seamless. It's great to see so many of you both here and online. I am, as Chanel said, short a presenter today. Unfortunately, Elliot could not be here. I luckily had her job about 10 years ago, so I think I can do it justice. And we will get started. All right, so again, I am Sara Passamonte. I am the current president and CEO of CompHERE Rochester. I have been with the organization for 20 years this year. I've had almost every position there, and in a small nonprofit of about 25 staff. Sometimes I'm doing some of the same things that I did 20 years ago. But I will say that CompHERE has shaped me as a person, and I hope that you'll find the mission sort of resonating within me in just things that I've learned over the last 20 years. I will give a nod to Elliot, who again cannot be here with us, but Elliot is our program manager extraordinaire, who not only helps to recruit volunteers and do presentations such as this, but is great at hand-holding volunteers through the process, which we'll talk more about. And while I'll be shamelessly plugging CompHERE through this entire presentation, what I want you to walk away knowing is that really volunteering and helping others in any capacity can be good for you as the volunteer. What is CompHERE? A lot of people will say, we've heard the name, but we don't really know what you do. So CompHERE is actually a word in the dictionary, and it means companion and peer. And the roots go back to a very small program that was operating out of the state psychiatric hospital, which would have been Rochester Psychiatric Center, back when the towers were full of people. And the program Adopt a Patient is sort of what it sounds like, in that they had friendly visitors coming to the hospital, people who lived there, to have these friendly visits. And shortly after the birth of that program, deinstitutionalization was also happening. So changed the name to CompHERE as it became more community-based. And what we focus on, and what we have focused on for about 50 years, mental health and wellness, certainly, community integration, so not so much site-based programming, but really making sure that people who have mental health challenges are able to utilize their community and be comfortable there. We look to break stigma around mental health, mental illness, which has been a little bit easier, I would say, post-pandemic, as everybody seems to be a little bit more comfortable talking about that. Our programs look like volunteer mentoring. We serve children, we serve adults, we serve everybody over the age of 5. So the only thing that we don't focus on is early childhood, because 3-year-olds need something different. We do peer support. So since peer support has become more formalized at some agencies, we've found that people with lived experience make really great staff. And so while we still work predominantly with volunteers, we also have some direct service staff who are credentialed peer support specialists or peer advocates to do a small array of behavioral health services for our participants as well. And we also serve veterans. So a newer program, in the last 10, 15 years, as we've opened up our doors to veterans. And they can get together through peer groups. So instead of a one-to-one model where we identify a mentor and a mentee or a helper and helpee, all of our veterans are able to get together and in some cases bring their families to special events. Most recently, we've joined forces with Ronnie, which is the Reentry Association of Western New York, and we have embedded peers working with people who are coming out of incarceration. I'm going to bring you a little bit of relevant history. I talked to you a bit about the founding year of 1973, giving us over 50 years in the Rochester community. So the Adopt a Patient program was established back then at the state hospital. And our founder, Bunny Skirble, that's what we call her. That's her actual known by name, but Bernice Skirble, she changed the mission a bit as she became familiar with that organization, brought it to the community where it is today, had a lot of early work with people at Strong and U of R to help formalize some aspects of the program. So it's not specific on the slide. What I will say is that students and faculty of U of R back in the 70s and 80s helped us not only to conduct some research about the effectiveness of our programming, but even helped us develop some of our training that we still use today for volunteers. In 1996, we were funded to move from adult support to children and teens as well. What else was happening during this time is New York State Office of Mental Health gave our founders some dissemination funds. So the program was able to move from Rochester across New York State to establish a bunch of new affiliates there and in Pennsylvania, and kind of just scattered from there to the point where by 2005, we had 13 affiliates in Australia. We had one in Montreal still there. So we are international, with the most recent international affiliate opening up in London in 2020. So this program has Rochester roots and we're so proud of it, but it has international ties. And I think what I want people to know is that this model is replicable. So anyone could conceivably start their own compeer program, pairing people in these supportive friendships and relationships. In 2005, we were recognized as a best practice by the American Psychological Association. In 2011, we started serving veterans through a partnership with the Veterans Outreach Center. 2017 to 2019, we had our first experience and exposure to a fee-for-service model. So previously grant-funded contracts with New York State Office of Mental Health, we were able to start billing for some services using some of those paid staff that I talked about, especially as peer support in the peer field was legitimized through credentialing, and Medicaid came along and said, these are valuable services that you are providing, and if we can get this to a fee-for-service model, why not support everything else we're doing and provide an array of services so that people who may not be ready for a volunteer type of relationship can get some of these services with their Medicaid managed care plan, and have identified some other funding opportunities to serve those people who may not have those plans as well. So we really have tried to maintain a model of programming for everybody, regardless of cost, regardless of insurance, regardless of ability to pay. In 2020, we're going to skip over the year 2020. A lot happened back then, but we're not going to talk about it. Compeer survived the pandemic, and I think that's most important to say that. We celebrated our 50-year anniversary in 2023 and just kind of celebrated, hey, not only did we survive this, where we were told people can't even be in the same room together, but our mission kind of got this, cred that we have been looking for so long. And to say that not only is volunteering important for mental health, and not only is it okay to talk about mental health and mental illness, but there's things that we can do about it. And then that importance of having social supports in place as we navigate illnesses, whether they're physical, mental, or other. And I do want to just bring to your attention, we're really excited to say that a student-led Compeer Club has arrived on the U of R campus as of this past year. So I hope to have some more information for all of you as we get better connected over the next coming months, and to let you know how other ways people here can get involved. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. We'll have a Q&A at the end. So as I said, I'm here to shamelessly plug Compeer the entire time. However, what I will tell you is we have some good information about the benefits that you have as a volunteer, whether you decide to give your time to a place like Compeer or do other things. So there's been some research coming out, I would say over the past 15, 20 years more heavily, that volunteering is not only good for the people you help, but good for the volunteer as well. So it's linked to such things as a longer lifespan, improved physical health, especially cardiovascular, endocrine systems, improved psychosocial health. So helping your own mental health in a capacity when you're helping somebody else. While there's some tips and tricks to maintaining that and getting the full benefit, there's certainly some psychological benefits to volunteering. And we have reduced risk behaviors such as binge drinking, smoking, and poor sleep. So there's a couple studies. There's a lot of studies. I'll highlight a few of them. And these are relatively high sample sizes. So while there's hundreds of these studies, I've just picked a few to talk with you about today. So for middle-aged people, there was a study conducted back in 2015 with about 7,800 participants. And they found that volunteers in that group had a reduced likelihood of abdominal fat and high blood glucose than the non-volunteer counterparts. And they had higher levels of the good cholesterol. In a study with older adults, with about 13,000 participants, they found that people over 50 who volunteered at least 100 hours per year had reduced mortality rates. And that's compared again with non-volunteers. And older adults found less likely to have high blood pressure than those who did not volunteer. There's a smaller study done with young people. I think there's still a lot more research to be done with this group, but high school students were asked to volunteer and they showed a link to reduced cardiovascular risk factors. Specifically for this group, I want to talk about some studies that were looked at as a whole, as a group, over 140 studies on health professionals volunteering. So you're all here as part of this, this university, this department, this employer who we're in a room full of health professionals, right? So this is not only being done locally, but looking at international studies and finding that there's a lot of chances to reach this group of health professionals who not only may have the skills to help somebody in a relational capacity, but that people who are in this profession, being mainly altruistic type people, that there's some recommendations to make extra effort to engage this group. So it's part of why we're here today. And we'll talk a little bit about why this might be working. Maybe you all have some thoughts in your heads right now about why volunteering may improve your own health. When we volunteer, especially in a relational capacity, we may feel like we're valued and needed by somebody else. Think about maybe grandparent studies. If any of you have heard of grandparents who spend a significant amount of time with their grandchildren are living longer. That's what I tell my mom as she helps me with my daughter. We have an increased sense of self-esteem and self-worth. We're becoming part of a broader purpose and that network that may come with the volunteer opportunity, the organization that you're volunteering for, the community, the neighborhood. And then there's also some physicality to some volunteer work. And while we don't ask our volunteers to do any heavy lifting, there's certainly a lot of projects out there where somebody would be exerting themselves a little bit more than if they were sitting home watching TV. So all of this can lead to a positive impact on our stress response. I think of if my body feels, hey, I'm in a good place and I'm helping somebody else out, I got to be in a pretty good place too to be able to pull this off, right? So maybe inducing a relaxation response, increasing those positive hormones and neurotransmitters that are associated with helping high. It's been called in activating the reward center. And then there's some exercise benefits too for some of those more physically demanding roles. So moving on to a little bit more about Compeer. We have our own research on things like customer satisfaction and While we have not been able to tie some of these studies directly to CompTIA, it's been a long time since we've had a study done on our volunteers. It's always been on the participants, but I think, there's something that can be said to that. But we find that our matches, and that's what we call a pair, an adult, about an adult and adult, or an adult and a youth, but 71% of our adult matches make it more than 2 years. And we actually have some matches that have been going on for 35 plus years, so almost as long as the program's been in operation in Monroe County, not to even mention all the other CompTIAs around the world. 61% of our youth experience more motivation and optimism about their future, and 63% of our participants feel less lonely because of CompTIA. So we have some good things going on for both our participants and our volunteers. And I just want to talk a little bit about this community-based mentoring, because I think when people hear the word mentoring, they might immediately go to workplace mentoring, career-based mentoring. And when we say the word mentor, I think some people even get scared by that and say, I'm not an expert in this. I can't help the next person. And maybe in a work environment, you feel like you're not quite, skilled enough to be that mentor in a workplace. But what we're doing is we're just showing people how to integrate in their community. So if you have successfully gone to Wegmans at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, you have mastered something that a lot of our participants and myself have not mastered. And I think that there's something to be said for people who can just show the way on day-to-day life, and it doesn't have to be anything miraculous. We're not moving mountains. We're just being a friend. So I'm going to play this video.
I'm DJ. I'm in 3rd grade. I like to play basketball, go outside and look for new bugs, and watch superhero movies. I love superheroes who kick the bad guys' butts. I want to be just like them one day. A doctor told me I have depression, which is why I get really sad sometimes. Sometimes I sleep all day and skip school. My mom tries to help, but I don't make it easy for her. This is Mike. He's my friend from CompTIA Rochester. He hangs out with me, and we do all kinds of cool stuff like go to baseball games and check out weird science stuff at the museum. Mike is awesome. He helps me be less sad. He's like a superhero and a friend. Other kids like me could use a friend like Mike. To be a friend, visit CompTIARochester.org.
They're not paid actors. The video is a bit dated, a little bit pre-pandemic, but what we also have is a part 2 to that video, which is Mike's side of the story as the volunteer. And if you go to our website and check out our videos, you'll hear Mike's side of the story where he comes in and says, I'm not a superhero. Whatever this kid was looking for, I don't think it was me, but it turned out to be that I could really help this person by just showing up. So much of what we do at CompTIA and what we've done over the last several decades is have people show up for each other. A little bit on how to refer somebody to CompTIA, or if you have a family member or anybody that's interested in getting services at CompTIA, we do like to cover this, and we're happy to come out and do further presentations by department. Anybody who might be able to make a referral to our program, as they do all come from a mental health professional, we'd love to take this show to you. So please get in contact with me. We've come a long way since the 70s and 80s, where a lot of people were getting referrals from, a full-blown clinician, maybe a private practice therapist. Now we're able to accept referrals from schools, so school-based, social workers and health professionals. We're able to accept referrals from primary care physicians because so many people are touching on mental health. And as long as we have a person who can help us manage if symptoms come up that a volunteer, is noticing on a visit, or things that we are not equipped to handle because we're a non-clinical organization with no, clinical staff. As long as somebody can help with covering that part of things, we're comfortable taking a referral. We work with children and teens 5 to 20. We work with adults 21 and up. We have some tailored programming for people who are 18 to 24 because it's a weird age, right? Transition years, college prep, if there's that involved. So we do have some flexibility there in the programs where somebody might end up. And as of now, for CompTIA Rochester, we serve Monroe County. Our veterans go out to Ontario and Wayne County, so Rochester has a slightly bigger footprint than Monroe County. But there's a CompTIA in Buffalo. There's a small program in Livingston County. There's, they're all over the place. So CompTIA.org will give you some of those other locations. But since we're a pretty local audience, I think we'll just let you know that if you would like to make a referral or know somebody that needs the services, these are kind of basic criteria. So we also have a very tailored mentor experience, volunteer experience. We put a lot of effort in this because it would be really nice to just say, hey, this kid's been waiting the longest, this person's been waiting the longest, and I'm going to match them with the next volunteer that comes through the door. So we really craft this to make a successful match because the research shows that in mentoring relationships that, 1 year, if you're not going to be able to make it 1 year, sometimes you can cause more harm than good. So we like to make sure that our volunteers are ready to take this on. We say 4 hours a month. It's not a big deal, but it is. It's a commitment to a person. So 1 hour a week may not seem like a lot, but we need to make sure that people are prepped and ready for it. So we do go through an extensive background check process, and that's we're putting people in cars with strangers, literally, on some occasions. So we do, fingerprinting. We have a relationship with the Office of Mental Health and the Justice Center to help make sure that our volunteers are safe and effective. And that being said, we take volunteers a little bit of a background too. I mean, everybody likes when there's a person in the room that can relate to them, right? So we may have some volunteers that have had a criminal history, especially in our work with the Reentry Association. We're getting to the point where we're finding that peers, even if they have a history of incarceration, they have something to give back to people who are also experiencing the same types of things. We do have a pre-match training session, so we cover things like boundaries and setting expectations. We cover the basic guidelines of the program. We have to tell people a lot, don't come in and just spend a bunch of money on this person. We're not here after your money. We're not here for you to give gifts to this person. We're not here to have you take this person in this extravagant experience that they're never going to be able to reproduce on their own. So we try to keep things very minimal expectations as far as the types of activities. We partner with a lot of places in Rochester, like the museums. We get movie tickets, we get baseball tickets, and we try to shape that experience for the volunteers so they don't have to think too much about what they're going to do with their CompTIA friend. Summer, I would say, is like the best time to get involved because there's so many free things going on. You can get outside, you can throw a ball around, take a walk. Sometimes it's just as simple as going out for a cup of coffee. And then during the match, we expect 1 year. I will tell you, very few people at the end of 1 year are saying, okay, I'm done now. I'm done with my friend. We create some lifelong relationships. I've been linked with the families that I've met through CompTIA for all of the 20 years that I've been at CompTIA. And I would like to share a little bit more about my story if you're up for it. So when I came to CompTIA, I was doing an internship through Nazareth College's Bachelor of Psych program. And I was looking for a place to do my internship. And somebody told me about CompTIA. And maybe like some of you, I had never heard of CompTIA. What is that? What does it mean? What are you doing? I got to know this organization and essentially never left. I did some other things in the meantime, but what I found about CompTIA, what I discovered is that there's a way for somebody like me to help. And I was on a track to maybe become a clinical psychologist. I found CompTIA and sort of just fell in love with the program and everything that it was doing. And when I got my first part-time job there as a direct service provider, I met some children through the program. And there's a young boy who lived in my town. I grew up in the Gates-Chili area, and there was a young man named Joey. He was 8 years old. And I said, give me that kid. I want to work with Joey. And Joey and I got to know each other. Well, I also very quickly became introduced to his twin brother and sister who were a year younger than him. So what ended up happening is I sort of became familiar with this whole family. And my friends would come with me to work with these kids. And it was as simple as, again, sometimes we're going for a walk around the block. This is not, we're not going out to the mall for a shopping experience every week. We were lucky to get scholarships to the YMCA, so we could do some swimming and we could facilitate some social relationships that were happening in the playroom. And over time, I watched these kids grow through, they're becoming preteens and teenagers. And there's a point in time where I felt like, yeah, they don't really need us anymore. They got their own friends. They're canceling on us half these visits. And then there would be these times where their needs were changing, right? So as they became adults and they graduated high school, I'm like, yeah, we got them through graduation and got their first jobs. Yeah, like we're on this track, right? So their grandmother was their primary caretaker their whole lives. They didn't have any relationship with their biological parents. And 2 years ago, their grandmother got diagnosed with glioblastoma. And through the relationship that I built with this family, I received the honor and very big responsibility of being the administrator on her will, her estate, the executor on her estate, and helping the children who are now 27 and 28 years old with life stuff, keeping them in their home after she passed away, working through the illness, becoming their Social Security rep payee. This is not what every Compeer volunteer goes through, but I just want to illustrate that this became such a natural, organic relationship for me that I don't really think about it as part of the program. I know we were connected through the program and it was intentional, but over time, it just becomes very much a part of your daily life. So I like to say I now have 3 adult children along with my 5-year-old. And what they do is they contact me for help because there's things that, need to get done, help paying the bills and things like that from a, organization standpoint and putting things on auto pay. There's logistics involved when somebody passes away and all that. But they also call me when there's good stuff going on. And so they have some really nice services in place that, like community habilitation and things like that. And sometimes one of the individuals will call me to say, hey, I just grilled, some ribs for the first time. And it's just really nice to have, to hear that the good things are going on. And I think we sometimes take for granted if we have a lot of social relationships, if we have healthy parents and family members, we may take for granted how many people we have that we can talk to when something good happens or when something bad happens. And for many people that get referred to Compeer, dealing with loneliness and a lack of a social network, that one person to talk to when everything could be going awry or going really great can make all the difference. And so, especially with children, there's a lot of research out there and encourage you, we can certainly do some follow-up here, but mentoring.org has some great resources on the effectiveness of mentoring in children. And it's this community-based mentoring. It's not, necessarily going into the school, although that can be fun if it's, meant to be recreational and not so much of a educational focus or tutoring. But that when you have these relationships for a year, for 2 years, for beyond, it can increase graduation rates. It can increase mental health. And that's for programs that may not even have a focus on mental health. Although I think you'd be hard pressed to find, a similar organization to us, like Big Brothers Big Sisters. They're working with the same kids we are at this point. So what might have been very cut and dry back again in the 80s, the 90s, this kid has a diagnosis, this person has a diagnosis, and this person does not. We see a lot more of that gray area of people just connecting with each other because of what they've gone through. I would like to share a little bit of Elliot's story as well. So Elliot came to Compeer as a friend of a colleague and volunteered at our annual cookout doing face painting. She was sold on getting matched with a teenager in the program, and Elliot did what we ask a volunteer to do. A year, 4 hours a month, recreational, got a full Compeer volunteer experience. And a position opened up a year ago, and we interviewed Elliot, and I said, wow, if I can get a person who's actually been a volunteer to help get other volunteers through the door, this is it. So Elliot is still linked with their match, and Elliot is absolutely flying through volunteer leads. So when we get somebody who's interested in volunteering, you're going to get a call in like 24 to 48 hours. You're going to get onboarded as quickly as humanly possible. We don't have, once a month orientations. We work around your schedule to make sure that we can accommodate you as you're willing to accommodate a Compeer experience and a match. So again, we put a lot of effort into that matching. And I think that's worked out for for me to get connected with these individuals who I ended up making a lifelong friendship with, we have a program called Compeer Calling and eBuddies where you can provide interim support to somebody as they're waiting for a Compeer volunteer, phone call, email. Like 15 years ago, I said, I can do that with an adult client. Well, of course, it took just a couple of short months before we're meeting for coffee. All right, we're going to be a one-to-one match. And she calls me her little sister, and we're still linked up. We text every day. So again, I can't speak enough about the program and what it's done for me and what I've seen it do for other people. We really value our connections with the local universities. So again, back to the Compeer Club on campus. We'd love to see so many people championing that effort so that when the student leaves, the club doesn't go away, because we see that happen too. So if anyone has any interest in supporting that club, we'll get you connected with the student leader and who else is helping with that. So our program, again, is it's replicable, it's beneficial to everybody. We've heard anecdotes over the years, like for all 50 years, we've heard these anecdotes of volunteers saying, I think I'm getting more out of this than my client is, or I really think they're doing as much for me as I'm doing for them. And so we had all these really nice stories that sounded good, but having the research to back it up and say, wow, it really might be helping me. It really might be just beyond a thought in my mind that this feels good and is providing these benefits to me down the road. So I think we are almost at a point for questions. And thank you for bearing with me as I covered both of mine and Elliot's parts. This is Elliot's contact information. And while she's not able to take a call today, I know if anybody contacts her, and my card's up here as well. I have some brochures that everybody can take. She'll be ready for you and make your experience becoming a Compeer volunteer as seamless as possible. We respect your time. We respect what this program means and how you're giving more than, one time a year episodic volunteer experience. We want to make sure that we have that relationship with you and that you feel supported by an entire agency and that you're not just out doing this good work alone, because we all do a little bit of that too, right? I bet many of you have been a Compeer to somebody informally, and maybe you didn't know what this was, but this is what we do. I have some citations for some of those studies. I think everybody will hopefully get a copy of this, and if you don't, we will make sure that you get at least these links.
Sarah, thank you. Join me. I'm gonna ask you to stay there. I'll sit in my seat, and I do have some questions, but I just want to share my experience. I did share it with you.
Thank you.
When I was a Compeer, and my experience was short-lived, so it was just about a year. And I had heard about this thing called Compeer and how it intrigued me. I didn't know it was an actual word. Compeer is in the dictionary, but I wanted to be able to help in some way, just put a smile on someone's face. Not that I'm that I thought I could fix anyone, but I wanted someone to smile, and I wanted to have a youth. And so through your organization, I was assigned a high school, I think she was a sophomore, and she had some mental health challenges. She was working with her therapist, and we were matched. Through our time together, I didn't think I was doing anything. Just as you said, there was the story with the young man and the superhero guy. I didn't think I was doing anything. I was just showing up. And little did I know that showing up for such a short period of time, just that year period of time, mattered to her. So I took her to the library. She was studying for something. She didn't know how to do research. So I said, let's go to the library. Got her a library card. And then showed her how to use the library, how to find her resources and things. And a couple of other things, took her to church with me and just, and tried to include her in family things on my end. And I ran into her, actually she ran into me. I was shopping in Pittsburgh Wegmans and someone called my name. She said, all I heard was, Miss Chanel. And I turned and I looked and it was her. Her face looked so familiar to me. She was an adult now. She was a nurse. And she remembered me. I didn't remember her name. I remembered her face. But she said, I just want you to know I'm a nurse now, and it's all because of you. And I said, because of me, I just felt so overwhelmed. And you talk about refilling your cup or filling your cup. For me, that made me feel like just the smallest actions do matter. And showing up for people. And, again, I didn't do anything. I didn't spend a lot of money on her. What are you doing in school? Okay, let me take you to the library. You have a library card, and just general conversation. And she felt so special. I remember someone doing that for me. I wasn't a compeer, but just an older family member taking me places who wasn't my mother and father. And it made me feel special. And I wanted to do that for someone else who wasn't in my family. So it was very meaningful. And it was really like full circle moment when I found out that she was a nurse and that she was doing well. Glad she was doing that.
I love that.
So thank you for your organization and all that you do. So we do have a flurry of questions here, so I'll just kind of jump in.
Wonderful.
Let's see. So this one, Kim Van Norden. Thank you for sharing your amazing work with us. I direct a research lab studying programs to reduce social isolation and loneliness in older adults. We recently completed a large randomized trial of AmeriCorps seniors volunteering with lonely older people. Our most striking finding was that less than 20% of our participants stuck with volunteering enough to benefit. We are excited to learn going forward about how to help older people who want to volunteer but struggle to engage. I'll reach out to you so we can discuss potential collaborations.
That sounds wonderful.
We have here, I was recently talking with a community partner about reinvigorating their volunteer program, but they expressed concerns regarding liability for both the client and the volunteer. How does CompHere address similar concerns? Thank you.
50 years of practice. So I'm sure in the beginning, being site-based at the hospital, there was enough regulations in place where we didn't have to think about things like fingerprinting. I'm not sure exactly what year we started doing really more formal background checks, but I know in about 2005, the State Office of Mental Health, as part of our sponsorship by them, we're not a licensed organization. I like to make that clear, but we have sponsorship that allowed us to do fingerprinting on volunteers. That is not just a one-time check for criminal history, which is how a lot of industries handle background checks, but it's a monitoring service. And this is what has helped us not only to be able to mitigate actual risk, but to get insurance for any of this, because to get that type of coverage to protect everybody from all the things that can happen with people, we are able to have that monitoring. Even if somebody gets a DWI, I mean, if they get a speeding ticket, we're not necessarily going to know about it, but even a DWI will show up. We get notified that a volunteer or a staff member who works with one-on-one with people has had this arrest or this notice. And what it does is, depending on the nature of the offense, it gives us an opportunity to come in and say, okay, this was a driving offense, so you're not going to be able to transport a client here of CompHere's for the next 5 years. However, it doesn't mean you can't continue your work together. I mean, there's a lot that goes into making a mistake, and we like to honor again that people may not have a squeaky clean record, and maybe there's something that would help them even be more relatable to a person that they're serving. But we do not only that, but a motor vehicle record check, because there is not always transportation, but most times the volunteers providing that transportation. You go pick up the child or teen, makes it a little bit easier sometimes on a family. Sometimes adults can be on a bus line. So we have ways around, people making a mistake. But that is what gives us that ability to say, what we're doing is actually safe. In addition to the motor vehicle record check, we're doing things like an identity check just to make sure that people are who they say they are. So we've been really lucky to get this resource. I will say, if we didn't have that sponsorship from the Office of Mental Health, what we would likely be doing is looking at about $100 a volunteer one time to fingerprint them through the Justice Center and have that type of service. So there's 3 locations that we send our volunteers to get these fingerprints, and it's at no charge to the volunteer.
Thank you. What is the current wait time for a client to be matched?
So that's a really good question, and it's a really tough one to answer. Because we don't match in when the order of when a referral was received, some people can get services within a couple months, and for some people, it could take a couple years. It's the hardest thing to tell somebody is that you're gonna get this referral and that we might not have a match for you right away. And this is because we put so much effort into that matching. I could easily say, you came in the most recently as a volunteer, so I'm going to match you with the child who's been waiting the longest. It would be nice if that always worked out, but we find that if we honor things like the volunteer's preferences, if we honor things maybe a little bit like geographic location, because I'm not going to send a volunteer from Hamlin to Victor, that kind of thing. We do try to put that lens on things so that when we do make a match, we're setting you up as a participant to have a long-lasting match. So I say, if the waiting list looks daunting, and it is, we maintain waiting lists of about 100 people at any given time. As soon as we make a match, we're getting more referrals, and it's always been like that because we are a desired service. And it's so nice to know that you're wanted, but the volunteers specifically, there's just not enough of them to go around, and we're climbing a bit, especially post-pandemic. But we find that this is why it's so important for us to get the word out and spread the word about the volunteer opportunity as much as we do, if not more than the service itself. So we've had people get matched in, like I said, a couple months, a couple years. It just kind of depends, and the person's willingness to engage with us too. So what we do offer are things like family support. So if a child gets referred to the program, maybe they're not going to get a volunteer right away, but the family, the parent, the guardian, the caretaker has immediate access to our family peer support team. And that can be sometimes what they really need is maybe a little bit of assistance with the whole family. And then hopefully by the time some of those crises are ironed out, we actually have a volunteer available. And I always say, if you don't get the referral in, there's no shot at us matching the client. Whereas once they have that match, again, it could be a 20-year, 30-year long experience, which I think is just unheard of in most medical services because we're still kind of in that get people in, get them treated, and get them out. Whereas Compeer is really meant to be there for the lifetime of a person, as long as they're still benefiting from that relationship.
Can a client have more than one Compeer?
So they can have more than one Compeer consecutively. Like if a match doesn't work out, that happens. They can certainly get another one after. Volunteers can conceivably have more than one client. We always say work on your one-to-one first, and then if it makes sense to add in another person, maybe a younger person, maybe you're working with a 18-year-old and then you guys take on a 10-year-old together kind of thing. We've done similar stuff to that. But certainly clients can get multiple volunteers as those previous volunteers may, end their volunteer service. Yeah, that's fine.
Great. Questions in the room? And as a reminder, the microphones are above us in the ceilings. So if you have a question, I have a couple more questions here that I can jump to. Okay. They just want to thank you and Compeer for the great work that you do. I've had several patients over the years who have benefited from the program. So this is
Awesome.
Let's see here. Thank you for sharing about your organization's work. Do you take clients that have substance use in addition to mental health?
So this is an important evolution of Compeer. I'm glad somebody asked that question. Our first, really 30, 40 years, we were pretty cut and dry that an active substance use issue would preclude them from their involvement. We wanted to see, 6 months of sobriety. And that's mainly for the fact that we are working with volunteers with the expectation that they're not mental health professionals in many cases, and that they may not be suited to work with somebody who is either attempting recovery or certainly, active in their use. With the add of the Medicaid billable services and formalized peer support, not only do we accept those clients, we are now actually equipped to work with those clients. This happens a lot in the reentry partnership as well. And what it's also done is, so for people who are earlier in recovery, we allow them to get involved with Compeer, and maybe we're just going to look for that volunteer more at that 6-month mark of sobriety, but it's case by case. And, things like marijuana laws changing and things like that, we've certainly adapted and evolved with the times as well to say that it's not, so cut and dry as it might have been in 1980 to say this person has a substance use issue and this person doesn't. So yes, the short answer is yes, and that they might go into a different service depending on how, fresh they are in recovery or if they're still actively using. And we have pretty strict guidelines in place. We didn't really get into the weeds with what you can't do with your compeer, but no activity can involve drugs, alcohol, gambling, that kind of thing.
What is your process for client referrals?
So we take referrals from mental health professionals. Again, primary care physicians can refer. If there is a person who's working a little bit more closely on the mental health, we would love for that person to be the identified, partner in this work. But we have a paper referral, believe it or not, and it is available on our website. So compeerrochester.org will have our referral. You can also request one from us if you want a hard copy. We're not fully digitized with our application processes yet, but we're getting there. And I always say, again, call if you have questions, that there's a lot of eligibility information. And we spend a lot of time telling a referring provider what their responsibilities are. And again, because we do not have clinicians on staff, we really lean on the person who made the referral to kind of stay involved. And what I really like, and this has become tricky with, demands of health providers, is that they actually get a chance to talk to a prospective volunteer before a match is made. So that therapist might say, this person would be perfect for my client, or they might have a conversation with a volunteer and say, this person is way off and this is not what my client will benefit from. And it could be something really nuanced, like a personality trait, or they don't have enough experience for my client, but again, we really look for people who are in a place in their recovery that they want this, they want to engage. We can't drag somebody out of their house. It's as much voluntary for the client as it is for the volunteer and the provider with our team. So yeah, visit the website to get the referral, look at the documents. And if you have any questions, you call the team, and we'll also come out and do that. Like I said, we'll do this presentation. If you have a group of providers who might all be interested in learning about this at the same time, we'll walk you through the referral process step by step.
Questions in the room?
If anyone has a story of their own volunteer, if that's shaped them, or if they've, felt those health benefits firsthand, I'd love to capture that. So even if you're not, comfortable saying it in the room, we are capturing this type of testimony just to see, if we're as on as we think we are.
While we give folks a few minutes to type those stories, or if anyone here has a story, I do have a follow-up question from Dr. Mathis. Can volunteers be individuals who are in remission/recovery from substance use?
Yes. So again, we do look for that sobriety period a little bit more so from a volunteer, mainly to make sure that they are in a good place in their own recovery to give back. We certainly don't want to put anyone in a position where that, having to have adding a visit, where they're responsible for somebody is going to put any strain whatsoever on their recovery. So yeah, the 6-month mark is pretty good, but somebody can get started in the process earlier too. We don't want to see somebody deep in crisis and they're getting, slapped with like community service to go to volunteer for compeer. That's not what we're trying to do. However, if that person's had a couple months to sort of decide what they want to do, and if they're committed to recovery, we can begin our work onboarding a volunteer earlier and maybe just look for a little bit more of that period of stability before we officially match them. And there's other ways to get involved too. I mean, we have periodic events. So in addition to those community discounts we have available and free tickets, we host our own events too that give kind of a safe space for somebody who might be like dipping their toe into compeer to just see what it's all about and maybe come again, do face painting at a cookout or something.
Would you say statistically that you see more adults needing compeers or children needing compeers?
Our waiting lists, believe it or not, are pretty equal. We do find that within the adult program, most of those referrals are for people who are 50 and above. So we don't see a ton of referrals for people who are 30s and 40s. I don't know what that is. My speculation has always been things like if people are, raising families, they might not come for that support because they're busy, getting their kids through school and things like that. Or, we like serving all ages, you would think it'd be sort of mixed, but we do see a lot of referrals for older adults as compared to the middle age. And then for children, We see kids of the whole age range, that 5 to 18, 5 to 21. We see a lot of them referred about the same rates, but the little kids get matched faster because it is common to get a volunteer. So I'll match with a 7-year-old. That sounds cute and adorable. And so some of those 14, 15-year-olds, boys and men wait longer, statistically still females volunteer at a higher rate. So we've done some pretty targeted interventions to recruit males, put the men back in mentoring, all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't always work. So we're always looking for male volunteers, especially so many of our young boys, they are being raised by grandmas, they're being raised by moms, they're being raised by older sisters, and they may have this surrounding of female role models and not a lot of male role models. So it's something we really look for.
Questions in the room?
One more thing on that question is that I think people may also have a good idea about what youth mentoring is because of programs like Big Brothers Big Sisters. So maybe volunteers and community members can wrap their head around children and teens and mentoring that way a little bit more so than you think about mentoring an adult. And because there's really not too much like compeer, I think people may not think of volunteering with an adult. So, to that end, I think we do try to spend a little bit more time focusing on recruiting those volunteers for adults to help explain what that really means as a companionship and a friendship program.
Is there a need for multilingual volunteers?
Yes, so we do serve, we serve Spanish-speaking families. A lot of times the child may have, pretty good split English and Spanish, but maybe the parent is only Spanish-speaking. We do provide interpreter services. It's not as impactful as having a volunteer who can speak your language. So typically we'll provide an interpreter for things like onboarding a volunteer or onboarding a client. And then we really do look for those individuals or ASL speaking or, people who can interpret and do both is wonderful. So we have had some people who translate as a profession come and volunteer, which is really nice because we don't have a ton of funding to pay for interpretation. 30 years, could we afford a translator? And I don't know if people want that. The feedback we get from clients a lot of times is I just want a mentor who speaks my language. I just want a mentor who looks like me. And so that, we definitely recruit from bilingual.
Gotten another question in. Do you get referrals from older adult mental health services? I saw a patient doing an intake there who I think would be a great fit.
We will take it. We'll look at the eligibility criteria and just make sure that everything else aligns. Some compeers have a dedicated older adult program and they will focus on like 65 and up usually, I think is, so sometimes they have enough to just say, we're going to, put a dedicated coordinator here who maybe specializes in older adult recreation. We just kind of blend everybody in with the adult program that seems to have worked. And it's interesting as you look at other compeers, they may look very different. So again, I think we have a pretty local audience, but as you get into other areas, that compeer might only be a small program embedded into a larger organization and they just pair adults in a companionship program, or they might have a youth program. Rarely do they have a veteran program. I think we're still the only affiliate that's doing any Medicaid billing. But again, we've been around the longest. We're the founding affiliate so we get to experiment with everything and tell, other affiliates if they, certainly provide consultation on if it's something that they want to take on. We found that, the billing was very foreign to us and felt weird at first, but it just expanded our ability to serve because there were people who did not qualify to get a volunteer for whatever reason. And those are people we can serve with staff, which has been really nice.
Seems like the questions have stopped, both in person and online. So with that, I'm going to thank you again, Sarah, for coming. And please join me.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
This has been great. And what I will ask any of our audience members in person or online, if they have questions, we do have the information that you provided. But we can also go online if they wanted to reach out to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
And I will have, for anyone who's not in person, I'll have some brochures if you'd like me to send them to you through in our office. I'm happy to do so because it sounds like we probably should have these in our clinic areas.
Please. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
All
again,
right.
everyone, for showing up, and thank you again, Sarah, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you.